data sets and measures of center. Previously, you have learned about data sets and measures of center in 6th grade, so these notes will be used as a recap for you and a refresh on your prior knowledge. But previously, you have learned TEKS 6.12c, which states, I can use numerical and graphical representations to calculate measures of center to represent and analyze data. So let's look into that just a little. So what is a data set? A data set, for our definition, is going to be a set of numbers that represent a set of data. Alright, so I could say something like, how many hours did 8 students spend on electronics over the weekend? And in this example, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 numbers in my data set, which represent these 8 students that I've asked on how many hours they've spent. So the different values in here, the 1, 2, 4, 5, that's the number of hours that each student has spent, the number of hours. What we want to know about our data sets, or what we want to remember, is that we want our data sets to be in numerical order from least to greatest. So if we can see in our data set here, it's not in least to greatest order. So what we want to start off doing is, when we're either creating our own data set or when we have a data set, that we write it in numerical order from least to greatest. Okay, so we're going to just look at our data set, and I have a 1, cross that off, 2, cross that off, I have a 3, cross that off, 2 4s, so I have a 4 here and a 4 here. Make sure that you write down both of those 4s, a 5, and then a 6, and a 7. So this would be the correct way to represent our data from least to greatest. Now, when we talk about measures of center, what we're talking about is a single value that represents a set of data. So the mean, median, and mode of a set of numbers. As you can see down here, I have this word range, and that's separate from our measures of center. We usually refer to our measures of center as this mean, median, mode type deal. So if we're talking about the mean, our mean is actually going to be what we refer as the average. So our mean is going to be the average value of our data set. So you can find averages within your grades. If you have 10 grades and you add up all those grades and you divide by the 10, then it'll give you your average. What we want to notice is this is the most common use of measures of center, but it's also not the most reliable. Okay, which means we can't always depend on it. Sometimes there's things that skew our mean just a little bit within our data set. So we want to be careful on which measure of center that we use. Now, if we're talking about our median, that's going to be referred to as our middle number, or the middle value in our data set, the middle value. And when you write your data set from least to greatest, it's literally going to be the value in the middle. If I'm going to start from the outside and work my way in, it's going to be that value in the middle. And sometimes it'll be 1 value, and sometimes it's going to be 2, so I'm going to show you both instances. But here, next we have the mode, and the mode is going to be the most frequent. So which number in your data set happens the most, okay? And that is going to be your mode. So say I have a data set with all of these values, but I have a 5 that happened 4 times and nothing else occurred more than 4 times. That 5 would be my mode. So it's my most frequent value, okay, that happens in our data set. And then you have the range, which is going to be the difference between the highest and lowest value. And we use subtraction to figure that out. So let's look a little deeper into each of these. If I'm looking at the mean, given the set of data below, try to calculate the mean. So my first step here is I want to start by organizing my data. Organize my data. And I want to do that by putting it from least to greatest, like I said before. So I'm going to start with my lowest value, which is 2. And then I can go ahead and cross that off. And I'm going to keep on writing in my numbers from lowest to greatest value, making sure that I don't forget any of my numbers. That would be a 7, and then I have an 8 and a 9. Now when I calculate my mean, I want to find the sum of all my numbers. So the sum of my values. So if I do that, I'm going to start by 2 plus 4, which give me 6, plus 5 would give me 11, plus another 5 would give me 16, plus a 6 would give me 22, plus a 7 would give me 29, plus my 8 would give me 37, and then plus my 9 is going to give me 46. So now that I have my sum of all my values, my next step is going to be to divide by the number of values. Divide by the number of values in my data set. So if I look at my values here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 values, okay? 8 values. And I'm going to divide 46 by 8. So if we do that over here, we can see that 46 divided by 8, well, 8 goes into 46 5 times, that's 40. I can subtract, I have 6 left over. I have to bring in my 0 and my decimal. Well, 8 goes into 60 7 times, that's 56. Can subtract, I have 4 left over. Add another 0, bring that down. And 8 goes into 45 times. And we have a mean of 5.75. So if we're looking at median, we want to do the same thing. We want to start by organizing our data. So we want to do that from least to greatest. So I'm going to start with my lowest value, which is 1. Write my 2 in. I have 2 more 2's. And then I have a 5, a 6, and a 9. Now that I have everything in least to greatest order, what I want to do is I want to start crossing off values from the outside working in, outside in. So we're going to start with our 1 and our 9, and we're just going to go ahead and we're going to start canceling off numbers. So I got rid of my 9, I got rid of my 1, got rid of my 6, got rid of my 2. And we're going to keep doing this until we're left with just this one value. And that one value is going to be our mode. So our mode in this exact data set is equals 2. Okay, now we can also have a situation where, say, we're left with 2 numbers in the middle, and those 2 numbers are going to be those 2 numbers are going to be, say that we don't have this 2 anymore. Say this 2 is gone. I got rid of it. Now this is our data set. Okay, so if I had my new data set, I want to start by first organizing my data. Okay, so I have my 1, 2, 2, 5, 6, and my 9. And now when I go to cross off my numbers, well, I'm not going to have one number in the middle. I'm going to have 2. So what I want to do is I want to calculate the sum of those numbers. I want to find the sum, and then I want to divide. I want to divide by 2. That's my third step. Divide by 2. So when I do this, see over here, I'm going to take 2 plus 5, which equals 7, and then I'm going to take 7, I'm going to divide it by 2. So 7 divided by 2, well, that's 3. Subtract, I have 1 left over, put in my decimal, bring down my 0, 2 goes into 10, 5 times, and I'm left with 3.5 as my median. Okay, so there's 2 different situations. One will leave you with 1 number and one will leave you with 2. With mode, we can have quite 3 different scenarios. I can have no mode, I can have 1 mode, and I can have multiple modes. So here's a data set with no modes. If I had 1, 2, 3, 4, that data set has no modes because every value in my data set only occurs once. Okay, now I can have a data set that has 1 mode, which would be something like 1, 2, 2, 3, and 4, and my mode would be 2 because that's the value in my data set that occurs the most. So 1 mode would be 1 value that occurs the most. Then I can also have a data set where I'm left with multiple modes. So say I have something like 1, 1, 3, 4, 6, 6, 7, 9, and 9. Now I have how many different values here that repeat twice? 1's repeat twice, 6's repeat twice, and my 9's repeat twice. So this is actually a multimodal data set. It has 3 modes. Okay, and this can happen as well. So no matter if a number occurs more than once, it's just the one number that occurs the most, and sometimes that can be more than one value. So this has 3 modes. Now we can calculate the range by finding first our data values in order. So I'm going to start with my lowest value, which is 4. Cross that off, 5, and then 10. I forgot a 7 in there. 7, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 20. Okay, so this is my data set now, and what I want to do is I want to find what is my highest number and what is my lowest. Well, my highest is 20 and my lowest is 4, so I'm going to take 20 and I'm going to subtract 4, and that is going to give me my range, which is 16. Okay, so it means from my lowest value to my highest value, I have a range of 16 other values, and this just shows us the spread of our data. So the range really shows us the spread. So now let's look at an example. I'm just going to give you one data set here, and we're just going to work through each of the modes, or each of the measures of center. So let's say I have 0, 4, 6, 7, 3, 2, 1, 6, and 5. Okay, I want to start by first organizing my data, so let's do that. We have organize data. So for my new data set, I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2 6s, and a 7. So if I want to calculate my mean is going to be the sum of all the numbers divided by the number of values. So if I take 0 plus 1, that's 1, plus 2 is 3, plus 3 is 6, plus 4 is 10, plus 5 is 15, plus 6 is 21, plus another 6 is 27, plus 7 will bring us to 35. So now I have my sum, which equals 35, divided by my number of values. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 values. So if I take 35 and I divide it by 9, well, 9 goes into 35 3 times, that's 27, and we have 8 left over. We can add our 0 in and then go ahead and bring that down. Then we can say 9 goes into 80 8 times, that's 72. And then we have 8 left over, and we can continue to do this, but it's going to be 0.88 repeating, and that's going to be our mean. Kind of an ugly number. If we would have got rid of this 0, then it would have been over 8, and that probably would have been a little nicer. But yes, 3.88 is going to be your mean. You'll usually never run into these decimal issues, so don't worry. So let's go on into our mean mode and range. I'm just going to go ahead. Here we go. Let's start with a new data set. So let's say if I have the values in this time in order, I have 1, 3, 4, 6, 9. Okay, now I want to find what is my median. Now my median is going to be the middle value. So what am I left with? Well, my 4 is in the middle, so my median is going to equal 4. Alright, now if I wanted to do my mode, I can go ahead and start with another data set, and I can have something like 2, 6, 3, 4, and that is going to be written again, 2, 3, 4, 6. And here, as you can see, everything only occurs once, so I actually have no mode in this one. Alright, but let's say that I added another 2, and now I want this data set. So now I have another 2 in there. Well, now I have 2 2s, so I don't have no mode anymore. I do have a mode, and my mode is going to be 2. Okay, so you have no mode, and then you have a mode of 2. I can also have a mode that has multiples. So if I had added something like another 6, okay, so then I have my 2 2s and I have my 2 6s, and now my mode is bimodal, okay, and that means it's 2 and 6, alright? You don't write 2 2 6 6, you just write 2 and 6, or 2 and 6 would be my mode there. Alright, and then if I wanted to calculate my range, I most certainly could do that. And I would take my highest value, which would be 6 here, and then I could subtract my lowest value over here, and 6 minus 2 would be 4, and 4 is going to be my range.